Welcome back. Well, in the past, it was an MBA or good management experience that were considered prerequisites for anyone aiming on becoming a C-suite executive. Nowadays, one could argue that to really excel at the top, experience working outside of South Africa and on the rest of the African continent is imperative in order to be considered for executive positions within larger corporates here in South Africa. This week's management section takes a look at this growing trend. Thandi Sizwe, of course, still with us, and we're also joined by Jessica Hubbard from Finweek as well. We've got Carlos Costa, Business Development Manager at Africa and Emerging Markets, and JJ van Dongen, Senior Vice President at Philips Africa, joining us to give us their perspective on this issue. Thank you so much for joining us today. JJ, I'll start off with you because you have the education experience when it comes to the MBA. In fact, you've got the background as a nuclear scientist and going into Philips. But what is your experience in terms of how much on-the-ground African experience has meant to your being able to fulfill your role at Philips?
I think most global multinationals are looking for well-rounded people. So and what we see is many people in their career paths will actually either have the academics, but then will go into research or go into marketing, sales, or be involved in distribution. And what we see now as well, as the global companies are seeing more and more interest in, say, in Africa or emerging markets, there's more and more need for people with experience on the ground, because it is challenging in Africa. And with 54 countries, it's not one market. Every country is different and needs to understanding those needs of those individual countries. Mm-hmm. So I found with my background as well, from the academic side, as well as being able to couple it with having experience on the ground, working with people in the ground in the different countries, makes a huge difference in terms of understanding.
You talk about that on-the-ground experience. We've heard and we hear of a lot of companies moving to Africa, and some of the challenging things which of course poses barriers for those companies in terms of expanding and getting into those markets. Some of those are things like culture and understanding people and how they live. I mean, what are some of the most important elements of that on-the-ground experience that would make it easy, or say for someone coming into a company that wants to expand to Africa?
I think taking our case study, we have a rapid accelerate plan across Africa. We're doubling the people we have on the ground in the space of 2 to 3 years. This year alone, we've recruited more than 80 managers across Africa. All of those are local managers. Most of those are local managers. But what we do see is a necessity for some infusion of the culture of the company and the talent that does exist as well, to give them the opportunity to develop. So one, yes, very important. We believe very fundamentally in our approach that if we're working in West Africa, it should be West Africans running our business and understanding the business there. Same for East Africa, Egypt, etc. But we do see it as very useful having the senior management people having an experience in that market as well. So we have placed general managers, and we are placing general managers in the teams, so they learn, so they then come back and actually operate at a different level when they come back to the organization. Mm-hmm.
Carlos, give us the perspective, of course, being involved in recruitment. Is there a mandate right now? Is Africa a big prerequisite when it comes to training up people, hiring people for executive positions, or just under that with the intention of them ultimately, of course, filling those positions?
Well, absolutely. We're seeing with more and more of our top clients, both on an international level and on a local level, that the more Africa experience you've got to your portfolio, to your profile, the better it is. We've got cases with mining companies that when they make strategic moves within their organization, so let's say they need a VP in Canada as an example, they would then look at who have they got in Africa, at their operations within Africa, and they would use someone at that level to bring them back into a VP level back home.
Carlos, when it comes to placing people in African markets, how amenable are local execs and local talents to moving to Africa and to getting experience in different markets and moving out of their comfort zones?
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, how keen are they going in?
Yeah.
Well, extremely. I think it's an exciting continent. There's so many great things happening. So we don't in terms of having to sell an opportunity, I think with the global hype out there, it's just become so much easier to just approach a senior executive. The benefits are great. It's going to do wonders to your portfolio. So,
and when they come back and they then, sorry Sam, can they then command higher salaries? In the case of Sifiso Debengwe, he's come back from Nigeria and done extremely well.
Yeah, absolutely. I would. It's another stepping stone. Not only are you going into Africa on a higher salary, but when you come back, you've got so much more to offer to an organization. So, yes, absolutely.
JJ, without putting you on the spot, I mean, you travel a lot in Africa. Would you be prepared to go and live in a Lagos? I mean, would you be prepared to pack up? Because it's a different environment.
I think the discussion is also, is it necessary at the level that I am to do that? But if I was in the roles that would want me to do that, yes, I would be. I think it's a great opportunity. I think the continent has stabilized tremendously, and the experience of going into a Kenya or a Nigeria or a Ghana, any of those countries is a great experience for a person in terms of development.
And perhaps there's also an opportunity to leave more of a legacy, to sort of get involved in succession planning, that kind of thing.
This is quite important, because one of the discussions where I go to another country, I spend a time there and I return. One of the things that we're learning as a company is that we want people, these type of execs, to be there for a period of 3 to 5 years, because it allows them to experience what they're creating. Often we have execs that move continuously, building a nice portfolio on their CV, but then they don't actually live the experience that they've actually created. And what we are driving towards it, first we'd like local talent, but secondly we'd like, if we have an expat that moves into those areas, that they actually leave something and they actually experience what they've created in terms of the next 3-year period.
Given, of course, that you're talking about diverse cities here, I mean, you know, as we say, 54 countries, not all of them certainly the same. Not all the cities are the same, but do you have to pay more to convince people to go and live in a place where they might not have the nice amenities that they'd be used to living in Sandton?
I think it is difficult. You do have to pay higher premiums for those individuals for their salaries, but also in terms of things like housing allowances, education allowances to actually support it. We do believe it's really well worth it. What we do see is also quite interesting when we're bringing back talent from, say, the US. People who've been to MIT or any of the other big universities who are African who want to return. There's not much difference in terms of salaries they can get in the US to what they can get in Africa. So they actually, it's quite interesting in terms of one of the challenges we've had with bringing so many MBA talent into Africa is that we're trying to look at the diaspora and bring them back. And a lot of people are really interested in returning back to Africa and being local in those markets.
But what you're saying is you're prepared to pay that because you see the return from being able to get that type of MBA level experience. So you also need the MBA as well going into Africa at these management levels.
Definitely at the opportunity at this stage.
And do you see certain countries as being more attractive than others, or sort of hotspots for talent at the moment, say in Nigeria or Ghana?
Absolutely. I would definitely say so. Normally the countries that have got the biggest growth, GDPs and that kind of thing, those are normally the hottest ones, and we see a lot of movement with diaspora, with people coming in from European countries where recession is, has become a big problem. So definitely key areas: Angola, Mozambique, Nigeria, and so forth.
In your recruitment, are there any challenges that you come across in terms of people saying, I don't know if I want to move there?
Absolutely. I think whether you're looking specific, if you're looking at expats, there's always the question where people get quite excited about the opportunity, the package, going into a new country, a new position, and so forth. But one has to consider all the things that come with it. So you've got to consider your family. You've got to consider, is there the right schools? Are there the environment is very important. And like JJ so rightfully said, 54 different countries. There are 54 different ways of living, cultures. So those are challenges that we try at DAV when we engage with candidates. We really try and put that into perspective for them.
Let's get back to the question at hand that we asked at the beginning when we introduced the topic. Is it imperative to have African management or management with African experience at C-suite executive level? Or do you learn that when you become an executive and, of course, spend your time traveling the continent?
From our side, one of the key things we're seeing is that we want to be locally relevant. So therefore, it's an understanding of that local environment is very important. So if we want to establish a local for local assembly plant, that can only come from understanding those complexities on the ground. You obviously can bring consultants in to do that, but it's better that our own staff understand that, because we want that model to be replicatable. So yes, it is important, and also try and give those individuals as much experience while on the ground there in terms of those type of complexities of projects, because that extends them and develops them.
I mean, I think it's actually quite important. You mentioned Sifiso Dabengo is now CEO of MTN. I mean, if you look at MTN, it's a telecoms giant that is expanding into the whole world, and it's all over in Africa, and you need someone who has an understanding and touch points in
and
those
perhaps
specific
added
markets in
credibility
Africa.
as well. He's been there, he knows the markets, he can come back and be involved in strategic
Absolutely.
planning.
And I mean, especially if you have companies like you have currently in South Africa that are aggressively moving to Africa, you want someone who can, take the baton and run with it and try and make it in Africa.
Give us some ideas of some of the experiences that you've had, JJ, fresh, new to the continent when it comes to understanding the complexities, the way that different governments work, and now looking back, some of the experiences that stand out for you.
It's two stories. The first one was of a colleague of mine who went to Burkina Faso last week or 2 weeks ago. And the cultural aspect, he was at a function in a rural area, and he was given a goat and a chicken as a gift. Now, what do you do when you're flying in with a goat and a chicken? And that's the same thing. That's one of the cultural aspects you need to learn. The second aspect relates to it is different in Africa. In many cases, in many countries in Africa, you have access to higher level government officials far more quickly and readily than you would in, say, a Netherlands or Germany. And you need to be able to interact at that level and have the right discussions, the appropriate discussions, and that requires a bit of learning from an experience perspective. So in both those types of areas, understanding the culture of the country you're in, as well as being able to operate at a different level than what you would normally be in, say, your home country. And that's what I've found as being really the most fascinating thing about being in Africa.
And how could one prepare for that? Just say you're an MBA student with long-term visions of being a CEO in Africa. How would you best groom yourself for that?
I think taking the opportunities that are given to you, not being frightened to step out and say, I want to do that. So if there are opportunities in Kenya or Uganda or Rwanda or Nigeria, take those opportunities, but also be very clear what you want to achieve while you're there. Often people, especially if they're in middle management, won't have a very clear path of where they want to go to in the future. But if you can define very clearly what you want to achieve out of your 3-year period that you may be in a country, that is the best thing, and what you want to do when you come back. So define those very clearly up front, and then it proves a great testing ground for you and allows you the opportunity to make mistakes, but also to come back with those learnings and actually be successful.
Learn by doing is always the best way to learn. Just Carlos, before we end this off, your tips for those who would like to use African experience in order to climb the ladder ultimately for big South African corporates?
Sure. I think be prepared, look at where you're going, make sure, I think like JJ said, be clear on what you want to achieve when you're there. And just be ready for a whole new world, but an exciting one at the same time.